Okay. You know, there's a saying that in China that you have one country, two systems. Yeah, and in Russia sometimes we say that there's one Russia and two countries. So you have well-known Russia and we have unknown Russia. And normally when we speak on this topic, we ask the audience to tell, what do you know about Russia? So what association do you have? And fortunately, we had a chance to have a dinner with UST representative yesterday, and we discussed everything about Russia, like bears, vodka, Trans-Siberian Railway, Museum of St. Petersburg, and all the things. And so I'm going to ask you one thing. So how many Russian brands do you know? Do you know any? So, no, not of course Russian ones. Vodka is not a brand, it's a product. So companies, do you know any Russian companies? Famous ones? No, it's Brazilian, yeah. Yeah, but when you ask him this question, so people usually mention Gazprom or some oil and gas companies. And indeed, Russia is big on oil and gas and big in mineral resources. And when we speak about obvious Russia, it is Russia which exports a lot of mineral resources. Yeah, it's up to 95% of our export. It's oil and gas, minerals, forests, metals, etc. But what is striking at the first sight, that all that industries, they constitute only 15% of Russian GDP, which is not a lot. I mean, have a big sector of other industries that are not really known in other parts of the world. So we decided to study what is happening there, what are the national champions in Russia and who made their success both in Russia and overseas, and what strategies led them to that point. So the objective of our report, which we published recently, it's this book it's still hot. It was published, I think, 2 weeks ago. We brought it here. Please help yourself after the speech and take it. The objective was to provide fresh insight into the lesser known but yet vibrant stratum of dynamic, competitive, and innovative Russian companies. So we selected several companies. They were 15, so we called the report Selected 15, and the companies had to meet at least one of the following criteria. The company has to be top performer in its field both domestically and abroad, and/or the company has invented a new business model or a new product. It has successfully adapted and scaled an existing business model, or outcompeted global players in the domestic market. So this report was presented in the World Economic Forum in Davos, and it was very well accepted and was provoked a lot of interest because, you know, it's really unknown Russia. So when we selected companies, we applied two approaches as usual, bottom up and top down. So first we looked at some industries that have very limited government presence, state presence. They have a lot of competition. And also we looked at different rankings, industry reports, interviews, and researchers. So we selected 5 industries where these champions exist, and I will quickly have an overview of them. So first one is retail. We have a company which is called Magnit. It's the largest Russian retail chain. Sometimes it's called Russian Walmart. They have more than 8,000 shops all around Russia. So, and they emerged in a small town in south of Russia. They expanded. Now they're the biggest retailers in Russia. The second one is Ozon. They're called Russian Amazon because Amazon is not present in Russia. They're the biggest online retailer. They have about 15,000 sales per day, which is quite significant in Russian internet. Second is consumer finance, the industry which didn't exist before. And Tinkoff Credit Systems is the bank, the first in Russia online bank, which might sound pretty obvious, but in Russia, which is big, and
it is actually the first and the only online.
Yes, it's only online bank. It doesn't have any branches, and it operates in more than 600 villages, towns, and cities. Kiwi, very interesting model. It's provider of micropayments and services, and to understand their model, you need to understand a bit Russian mentality. So Russian people, they like cash. They don't like cards, they don't like electronic payments, so they like cash payments. And for example, if you want to top up your phone, you don't go online, you don't go to online bank or to telecom operator office. You just go to special machine, special terminal, you put cash inside, you put your number in, you top up your phone. And the number of such terminals in Russia, it exceeds the number of ATMs 4 times. Just for you to understand. You can do anything there. You can pay for your phone, you can pay your utility bills, you can pay police fines, you can send money to your relative. Just this very, very popular model. And the Kiwi operates half of them in Russia. In high tech, we have a lot of companies thanks to Russian engineering school. The most prominent is Yandex. It's Russian Google. You know that Russian language is the second largest language in the internet globally. The third one is Chinese, I think, now. The first one is English. And thanks to that, and thanks to the complexity of Russian language, Yandex originally outperformed Google in terms of search. And now it's a very big IT company with all the services. It's the best map service in Russia, traffic, taxi service, everything, cloud storage. And Russia, I think, is one of the only 4 countries in the world where local IT companies, they outperform global competitors. They have own search, we have own mapping software, we have own social networks, etc. Alavar is the producer of and publisher of mobile games, of casual games. They have 70% of Russian market. Now they're expanding overseas. Transas is #1 globally in navigation and simulation system. They produce maps for marine, for ships, even for space. Their software was installed in the first space station Mir. Ascon is a producer of computer-aided design solutions. It's analog of AutoCAD, if you know this software. Prognos is a kind of SAP type software, business intelligence solutions. NTMDT, very niche player. They #2 globally in high precision microscopes. ABBYY, maybe you know the company. It's the company which invented Fine Reader software, text recognition software, which is now installed in many scanners which recognize text. And Luxoft, the company which successfully outperform Indian offshore programming companies. They have offices in 13 countries. They have 21 offices. In consumer goods, we also have 2 interesting companies. The first one is Plat. They make toothpaste. Yeah, so it sounds strange, but not many national companies could compete with Colgate, with Blender Met in their markets. And Splat is very innovative in this. They make, for example, black toothpaste. They make toothpaste with pepper flavor, with many, many different flavors. They in upper segment, and they regularly have bids to buy from global champions, but they reject. They really like, and the owner is quite a character, and he really loves what he's doing. And Terimok is a very successful national fast food chain. They rival McDonald's and Burger King. They have 250 outlets in Russian cities, and it's the first fast food chain which put a bet on national food. And they, instead of selling hamburgers and fried chicken, they are selling national Russian pancakes, and they created special kind of atmosphere, and they're also very successful. And New York Times recently even featured Terimok as one of 10 global fast food chains that have to be present in New York, actually. And in telecom, we have Megafon. It's the latest entry to telecom market in Russia. They were the last when the market was already saturated, divided. And they succeeded. Now they have more than 60 million people subscribing to their services. So some information about the companies. So what we found in our research. So they are from all around Russia, but of course with big concentration in Moscow and St. Petersburg, which reflects the structure of Russian economy. You know, the most of economy is in Moscow and in St. Petersburg. But what is interesting, most of them were founded more than 15 years ago. And which means that the companies are very sustainable. Russia had 3 big crises over that time in 98, in 2008, and now they have the third one. And the companies, they really managed to pass the crisis well and to develop. What is really interesting that majority of those companies, they're building on Russian engineering heritage. You know that Russia has strong engineering school, and at least 80% of these companies, they relied on knowledge gained from Russian technical and scientific education. So they work in either IT sector, or they develop new solutions, new products, new systems, and even the founders, they have technical or mathematical degree of those companies. Even the founder of Splat, this toothpaste, he is an engineer. They're still mostly run by their founders, and half of them are still private, which means that founders, that they have very positive outlook on the future. They still want to develop that companies and them to grow and to go global in many of those companies. So their success is striking, actually, because in Russia it's hard to make business, to do business. And there are certain challenges that any businessman, any entrepreneur in Russia is facing. And here are just some of them. It's first of all, it's very poor market institutions. You know that market came to Russia only 25 years ago. In some industries, they didn't exist. Like some institutions, they didn't exist, and they're still very, very poorly developed, like finance markets, capital markets, property rights protection, etc. Deficient business infrastructure. This is what I told. Some industries, they didn't exist. So, for example, if you want to build a retail chain, you need to have a logistics company to support, and they didn't exist. And companies like Magnet, like Ozone, they had to build their own logistics capability to succeed in Russia. And that is why this is what prevented many internationals to come to Russia, or they came and they failed. Walmart came to Russia and they left. Carrefour came to Russia and they left. And Magnet, a small company from South Russia, from a small city, they managed to grow, and now they built the biggest logistics company in Russia, and they own in-house capability. Russia is not famous for entrepreneurial culture, because entrepreneurship was literally banned and illegal for 75 years. And even in the 90s, when it came, it had very negative image in Russian society. A lot of entrepreneurs, they are treated like cheaters, or like people who are not honest, they don't have integrity, etc. And any entrepreneur has to fight only against market challenges, but against public perception, and to prove that he or she is doing great things and developing Russia and developing people. And the last one is lack of trust. There's a lot of service about it, and in Russia, people, they don't trust business. It's a kind of friends and family business community. They trust people they know, and it's very difficult to trust to a stranger. And I already mentioned this cash economy. That's just one of examples. How do online shops work in globally? So you go to the website, you pay with a credit card, the online shop receives a request and sends it by post. In Russia, it doesn't work. That is why Amazon just didn't work in Russia. So in Russia, you go to the website, you select the product, you make a request, the product is delivered to you by courier, not by the post office, not by the post. You see the product, you see that it's fine, that it's working, you're not cheated, you pay with cash, and you enjoy the product. That is why online retailers, they don't have working capital. You know, they have to have huge amount of stock. And you know, all these challenges, they really protected the Russian market from international entrants. And many of Russian national champions, they managed to circumvent that challenge and to transform them into opportunities. So when we look at their strategies,
Did you say that there were barriers to entry, foreign entry, or not in these sectors that you're describing?
I mean,
Easy for foreign companies to come in?
No, not at all. There's no infrastructure. You have to build your in-house capabilities.
But there's regulatory or...
I mean, everything. Everything. No regulatory, but I mean, as I mentioned, yeah, it's like there's like empty field. And for example, many global companies, they outsource a lot of functions. They outsource a lot of things. Like Amazon, it's sending deliveries by just normal post. And for example, post office in 90s, post service in 90s in Russia was very poorly developed, and just you couldn't send it, and you were not sure that it would be delivered. Like for example, just one example. And
if I may, there are some restrictions in specific industries, military or mass media, but the rest is.
Yes. But in these industries, I specifically mentioned in the very beginning, we selected only industries where state control is very, very low. So these industries were open, always open for anyone. And it helped really Russian companies. Surprisingly, it didn't, it really helped them to flourish and to perform their global competitors. So when we talk about strategy that helped them to succeed, we have two dimensions. First one is attitude to local context. Some companies saw it as an opportunity to develop new products, to offer new products. Some of them saw it as a threat, which can be successfully circumvented and transformed into opportunity. And some companies, they have local ambitions, so they serve on the local market and the global market. And here are some examples. So the companies that were focusing local and that were seeing local context as a threat, we call this group best adaptation. So the companies that adapted existing business models to the Russian context. You know that online shopping and retail trade, it existed always globally. And these companies, they just took well-proven model, brought to Russia, but it was not easy at all. So they were very innovative in how they did it. As I told Ozon, they had to build their own delivery centers. So you couldn't rely on Russian post service. You had to build your own service. You had to develop courier service. And at the end of the day, you have like a lot of couriers in Moscow traveling in metro, carrying a lot of cash with them. Because you deliver products, you get cash, and they come back to the office. Magnet, they built their own logistics company. And once I traveled by car from Moscow to Switzerland, and I was standing at the border between Belarus and Poland, and there were huge queue of trucks standing at the border, and I think 1/3 of them had a name Magnet on them. So they became the biggest logistics company in Russia. And now they're building their own farms because they want to source products to their shops, and they are not satisfied with capabilities of local producers. Companies that are focusing on local market and see local context as an opportunity, they develop unique products tailored to the local needs. As I told Telemok, they are developing, so they were the first to put stakes on Russian local food. They serve high quality Russian cuisine at affordable price, and they created a unique style of service that resonates with local Russian tradition. Yandex was very successful in search in Russian language internet, and they have strong R&D underpinned with the best technical talents, and they really leverage specifics of Russian morphology. The Russian language is very difficult, and it took a long time for Google to capture it. And Kiwi, they started as a small company, just setting up some terminals in bigger cities, and now they have alliance with Visa. They are publicly traded. They shifted its focus to online payments, and they just trying to expand it overseas. Megaphone, they were the last to come to the telecom market, but they were the first to mention, to notice the need for data connectivity services. So biggest operators, they didn't pay attention to 3G, for example, network, and Megaphone started to do it in the first ones, and they were outperformed their competitors in this field. Very interesting quadrant is global niche. It's a company that used local talent to develop a global niche. All of them, they have single product mostly, or single type of product. They started in Russia, but they expanded and they sell to multiple countries. For example, Splat, they have very strong R&D. They use natural ingredients in their toothpaste. They innovate constantly. They have creative marketing, and they now export to 28 countries globally. They're very interested in China. They tried to enter China. They failed. Now they're trying to do it again with more solid approach, with more adaptation to local specifics, but they still have a long way to go, I think. Alavar, for example, also interesting company. They were born in Novosibirsk, which is sometimes considered as Russian Soviet Silicon Valley. Is a big scientific science park, one of the best engineering schools in Russia. And they started as game developer, and now they switched to producing and publishing computer games. Transas was founded by just two sailors. They wanted to make a couple of maps for themselves. Their hobby was programming, and now, as I said, it's number one company in the world which produces navigation software. So, and the last one, we call them global citizens, is the companies that now have most of the operations, revenues, and talents outside of Russia. It's Luxoft, which is a company which rivals Indian competitors, mostly because of they focused on complex tailor-made solutions. So they're not cheap, but they really know what their customer needs, and they offer really tailor-made solutions, and they work in 13 countries. And they serve mostly Fortune 500 clients all over the world. And ABBYY also is a big, now global company. They don't even associate themselves with Russia anymore. So we also looked at how those companies innovated and where they innovated. You know that in Russia, innovation is always considered as only product innovation, as an invention of some new great product. And you can see here that if we put all types of innovations that can exist in business in terms of business model, product offering, or service experience, most of them are innovative in terms of product. So they're very good in designing, producing, and delivering very good product. But for Russia, you can see that in service they're very bad. In business model, they still have a lot of opportunities to grow, and they have to expand their innovation, their reach, and to be more innovative in everything which is related to service, to customer, and to business systems. So, as I said, a lot of them have a strategy to grow. Some of them are coming to Skolkovo, and we already have programs for some of them, helping them to globalize. And what we advise them is to stop building business model on leveraging local specifics, because they succeeded because they knew Russian market, they successfully adopted global models, they relied on Russian engineering schools, or they produced a product which is well accepted in Russia. They have to build business model built around innovation. Innovation all around the value chain, starting from business model and finishing with customer experience. So that's in short. We have the report. Feel free to take it. We have all these 15 cases with numbers, with figures, with some quotes from the founders. And we are going to continue this effort and to study more and more companies, Russian companies, and to study their strategies as well. Thank you very much. If you have any questions, please.
Do you have UPS, DHL, or TNT over in Russia?
Yes, we have. We have, but I think now they're restricted to mostly to corporate customers. Because
They're very expensive.
And they're very expensive, yes.
We do have a version launched by the Russian Post, which is still quite expensive and not very effective. So for e-commerce, delivery is really a huge problem, especially to the smaller towns, smaller cities. It's really a challenge.
Yes.
Which makes very unusual solutions like big operators of e-commerce. They start to establish sort of redemption centers where you can go and pick up your parcel. So
Yeah.
you don't
It's
get
what
the
Ozone is
parcel
doing, yeah.
delivered to your postal address. You go and pick it there, and it's quicker.
Yeah.
or there are some very innovative things. But Kyiv, for example, they try to differentiate into these delivery services, and what they do is like automats. They be difficult to explain, but the idea is you have a set of boxes in public places, like for example
Shopping malls.
shopping malls, and when you order something from an e-commerce shop, you tell them to deliver to this place, and then you have a code, and then you dial the code, and you have your box open, and you take the parcel. So
Yes. When I lived in Switzerland, the thing which really struck me is the efficiency of post service. And every day I opened my mailbox. Every day I had a letter, on any matter, like from a bank, from the car leasing company, from the city office, whatever. In Moscow, I have maybe one mail in a month with my utility bills.
Yeah.
Yeah, really. And I got used in Switzerland. You just go, you make a payment, and you have it delivered to your home. Like in Moscow, it's not the case. And all those companies, like this is what Ozon was doing. They build those centers because they cannot rely on Russian post service. And why I said that these DHL and UPS, they used by corporate clients, they used to serve private customers, but there was very interesting thing happening. People were ordering something on Amazon, and it was delivered by DHL, and the amount of order was so high that DHL refused to do it at a certain moment because they didn't have capability in Russia to do it, and they started to serve only corporate clients. So recently, I think it happened 2 years ago. That's that's Russian specifics. Yeah.
it's the problem that when you order from Amazon, the limit which you can import without a duty is quite low.
Another one.
About $100, something like this. Above, you have to pay a duty, which is not that big, the duty itself, but the procedure is terrible.
Yeah.
You have to go to the
Speaking
customs,
about regulations,
write the letters, and it ruins the whole thing.
I buy on Amazon online and frequently get stuff shipped here to Hong Kong within 48 hours and no customs, nothing. It's just
Yeah.
on my doorstep in just a couple of days.
Yeah. Like just one more example that we have an online service of tailor-made shirts in Russia, and my friend is running the company, and they're pretty successful in Russia. So you just this normal system, you just take measurement of yourself, you order the shirt, you have a kind of design constructor there, and it's delivered to your home. And they wanted to expand outside of Russia because they wanted to deliver to different countries, and they found that they couldn't because the cost of shipment from Russia to other countries, it exceeds, for example, shipment from India 4 times. Yeah, and it really kills all economy of this. For example, this is the limitation of them to grow. They're speaking about challenges in Russia as well. Yeah, you had a question.
Yeah, does the report make any policy recommendations, or do you have any thoughts on policy recommendations for the government?
Not at this stage, no. No. Yeah.
Any other questions?
Yeah.
If not, then we'll
Yeah, and the report is called Selective 15. So it was a kind of an accident that there were 15 companies, and now we are going to launch a kind of a brand, and they have annual report which is called Selective 15 on different topics. And one of the topics we are going to investigate is Russia-China business relations, and we are going to launch a report on Russian companies that are successful in China and Chinese companies that are successful in Russia. So it's kind of idea for the next one. Yeah.
So one question. So all these companies are like 100% owned by Russia, right? Is there any successful company that is like a joint company by Russia and other countries?
You mean among these ones?
Not
You mean joint ventures or
Yes,
like?
A joint cooperation between Russia and some company from other countries.
Yeah, of course. Like I think in any industry we have, like even in mineral resources as well. Like in banks, we have a lot of international banks coming. I don't know, you have UBS or like really a lot. Yeah.
I mean, some of the largest international players have been more successful in Russia than any other part of the world in terms of margins and profitability. Now, it's changing a little bit relative to the market conditions in Russia. Procter & Gamble, Mars, Coca-Cola, Unilever, they've all done very well in Russia. And it's many times it's joint ventures or at least cooperation with local government. And the interesting thing here is that these companies have been successful even with the very competitive global players. And I think they've learned from some. But Russia has been a very good market for a number of global players.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, great.
Thank you very much.